Now that you have the handle off, it will be easier to polish the actual handle, and also you can now get to the stop motion screw. Now there is a reason for removing the stop motion screw, which I will explain. Very often with old machines, the stop motion screw no longer works properly, and that is the case with this one. Whichever way I turn it, the needle still wants to go up and down, whereas it should disconnect when it's turned in one direction. So to try and rectify that, it doesn't always work, but to try, we need to take off the stop motion screw by undoing this screw here. It unscrews. You can see it's absolutely filthy, and inside there is a washer with 3 little ears on it. Put that onto your stop motion screw in the same position, the same way round as when it came off, so you don't forget which way it came. And then inside here, very often there's old oil and muck which can get in the way of the mechanism. You can take off the balance wheel, I'll correct that. You might be able to take off the balance wheel, but this one I can't, so I don't care. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clean in there, get out as much of the muck as possible, and lubricate it with sewing machine oil. I will clean thoroughly the stop motion screw and the washer inside, and then when I reassemble, with a bit of luck, the stop motion screw might work. If it doesn't, it's not going to have to trouble us. So that, in a nutshell, is how to clean the machine. So once I've cleaned it up, I'm going to talk about how to lubricate it. I spent yesterday evening polishing the metal work. I did remove the bobbin winder to polish it properly, and now I'll show you how to lubricate the machine. First of all, I'm going to tip it back so we can look at the underneath. Hook's in place. And back it goes. Now underneath here, I did find a lot of hard residue of old oil, especially on this joint here, and that had drained down from the inside of the pillar of the machine over a number of years and had gone hard. And the way I removed that was with an old toothbrush. I sprayed WD-40 onto the toothbrush and rubbed at it, and it came off after a few minutes. I also gave a little bit of a brushing with WD-40 over here because that was pretty dirty too, but by and large it's fairly clean. So now it's very dry but clean. So now I'm going to apply some oil, and it's just a question of using your common sense. If there's a moving part, oil it. So I'll put some oil there. I'll put some oil here. You'll see that there's a hole there to take oil, and I'll generally just put some oil around here because those are moving parts, and we'll give a gentle turn of the balance wheel so you can see the movement. So that's the idea with the underneath. Just give it plenty of oil. You'll probably need some tissue paper in the underneath just to catch the excess when it drips down. You will remember that the needle bar and presser bar were pretty dirty. I've cleaned them off, and just a tiny bit of oil on the needle bar will just help it when it goes up and down. A tiny bit also on the presser bar. The trouble is that this will drain through down underneath and can go on your work. So when you've oiled it, don't use the machine for sewing for a couple of days, and make sure that you wipe carefully underneath before you actually start sewing. Next, we need to make sure that the top of the thread take-up lever, which runs in a groove inside here, is oiled. Now there's still a bit of residue. I can get that off later, but I want to show where you oil it. It runs in a groove behind here. It's very difficult to get to. So what you can do is get a little bit in from here. It will probably drain everywhere, but it will find its way to where it needs to be. Also, there is an oiling point in the top of the machine. I'll just show you with a cocktail stick. It's there. Get some oil down that hole too. Next, we're looking at the end of the machine near the balance wheel. In the bobbin winder, there's a tiny little hole here where you need to put a bit of oil. That will probably drip everywhere. And also there is a large hole up here. Now I'm not going to oil from there because we can get to that bit more easily from the back. But what is important is this hole here. I've removed this cover just to get easier access. But there is a hole here which will lubricate the shaft that the balance wheel runs on. The stitch length regulator screw was very stiff, so what I did was I put a bit of oil here and screwed it in and out several times so that it began to free up. Before I replace the handle, I'll show you the stop motion screw, and if you remember it wasn't working properly. I've had it off, cleaned it thoroughly and oiled inside. So now when it's engaged, in other words turned all the way clockwise, the needle goes up and down. If I disengage it, turn it all the way it can go anti-clockwise, the needle is now disengaged. Before I replace the handle, the hand crank, I'll show you where you need to oil that. I've already done it. There is a hole here, right in the centre. And also, there is a hole here, just there, where I put in the cocktail stick. Because inside here are two large cogs, one large one here, smaller one here, and these two holes will lubricate the centre of each cog. You will also find it helpful to put a little bit of oil up here where this little arm moves. Looking at the back of the machine, you'll see that there's a plate. Now there is an oiling hole here, but the best way to get to the mechanism is just take this plate off. And you can see all the works inside. Now these pieces here are as dry as a bone because this machine hasn't been oiled for decades. So I'm going to give it a generous amount of oil and let it all run down to the different parts. Better take the stick out. There, not a creak. Underneath the front slide plate is a little well for the oil to lubricate the shuttle race. Now it's difficult to see on camera, but it's just here. Now that should have a piece of felt down it. All these machines, when they were manufactured, had a little piece of felt down that little well to absorb the oil. Now the felt is long gone from this machine, so I'm going to pack down inside some boucle cotton knitting yarn, and I'm going to pack it down as firmly as I can. I think that's enough, so I'll snip off the top and pack it down a bit further. And now I'm going to soak that with oil. So what will happen is that the oil will gently and gradually seep out of a tiny hole at the bottom inside here, and that will keep the lubrication there underneath the machine. When you oil the machine, you inevitably end up with some of the oil coming onto the machine, onto the black and the decorated parts. Now this is ideal for cleaning the machine. The best way to clean a machine is with a drop of oil, sewing machine oil, on a piece of cotton wool, and rub it gently all over to get rid of all the old dirt that's on the machine. Of course you need to dust it and get any excess off first, but this brings up a good shine. Once you've done that all over, give it a good second wipe down with a soft cotton cloth. I've now cleaned it all over with oil and given it a quick dry down with a soft cotton cloth, and we'll now see how it turns. Perfect. The little rattle you can hear is from the top part of the handle where it engages with the wheel. All I have to do there is put a little bit of cloth around it and that will stop that rattle. But the works are fine.